Aaron Bjork joins us today on the Azure DevOps Podcast.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome back to the Azure DevOps Podcast. Go online to www.azuredevops.show to see show notes and other episodes. Aaron Bjork joins us today. Aaron is a principal group program manager at Microsoft, where he directs all work in the areas of Agile project management, reporting, and collaboration for Azure DevOps Services. He is a 16-year Microsoft veteran who has spent his career building products that promote and encourage team productivity. Aaron is a recognized Agile thought leader and speaks regularly with companies around the world on how to improve their software development practices. He has a proven track record of setting a vision, creating and building teams, driving user experience, and delivering results. Aaron, it's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Hey, Jeffrey. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And you're an early bird, I hear. It's quite early where you are right now.
Yeah, we're 7 a.m. here out on the West Coast. So part of my job is we work with folks all around the world. So I tend to adjust my schedule to West Coast time, and it helps me beat the commute a little bit, helps me stay connected with colleagues on the East Coast. And then I'm also just better in the morning most days, so that helps as well. So
Awesome. So I hear that you have quite a farm of animals.
Yeah, I've got, it's not as extensive as some people, but I have, my family and I live in a little town called Maple Valley, which is a suburb of the kind of greater Seattle area. And, we have 15 acres, and we have some horses, we have goats, chickens, dogs, and cats. So that's what kind of keeps me busy when I'm not in the office writing code. Nice.
So a little bit of commute into the office?
Yeah, a little bit of commute. We're about 25 miles away as the crow flies, but it's takes a little longer than you might think on some days to get in. So,
well, I've driven those Seattle and Redmond highways. There's not many passageways with the mountains and the river. I mean, there's only a few ways through.
Yeah, I'm a back roads guy, so I stay away from the main freeways. But like I said, come in early, maybe get out a little early, and then finish the day from home, and you can make it work. So
that's awesome.
But yeah, I love the space though. I love being out a little ways, and I tell people all the time that we're building things, all day long here at work, which are digital. Like, you don't really touch them. You touch screens, and you interact with them through devices. And I really enjoy the balance, if you will, of living in a place where we're sort of working the land and building fences and things like that, which are more tangible, which you can touch and feel. So it creates a nice balance, if you will.
Oh yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I mean, it's west of Austin, Texas, and we live out in the country, and we have some longhorn cows and donkeys grazing and walking around our cars and whatnot. And my daughter has chickens in the big chicken coop, and so
see, that's what I call a real farm. So we sort of have the little sort of hobby farm, but I love it. So yeah, it's great.
No, I wouldn't call it a real farm. I mean, the rancher across the street, he owns the cows, but they graze on our place as well. The properties are connected. But I don't have any horses. You have horses. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, my wife's into the horses. She's kind of the stereotypical, grew up as a little girl with horses, and we got to a point in our life where that was either going to be a pipe dream or we were going to do something about it. And so we decided to do something about it a few years back, and it's really become a great decision for us. Like I said, it's given us balance and a lot of fun with the kids, and we really enjoy the hard work that's involved with it as well. So it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. So for the listeners who might not be as familiar with you, how did you come to Microsoft and this role at Microsoft?
Yeah, so coming to Microsoft was quite a few years ago, but I was working for startups in the Seattle area and had always really resisted the idea of working for a big company, and for Microsoft in particular. I don't know why, but it was stuck in my head that it was not a good place, and I was wrong. So I ended up, in kind of job hopping, ended up finding a contract out here that was really appealing, and I landed a job working in what we called the build lab at the time of the developer division. So we were, building a bunch of automation to help us produce Visual Studio and the various products that came out of the developer division at the time. And I was a developer, so I joined as an engineer and spent, 6 or 7 years writing code in that space, both as a developer and then a developer lead. And then, gosh, it's been 10 years or so now, I made the switch into what we call program management here at Microsoft. And in some ways I call that, I tell people that's like joining the dark side. You switch from doing real work to, figuring out the real work that we should do. But it became a great kind of choice for me because I really, really enjoyed not just the implementation details of what we were building, but I really loved, the decisions that went into that about why we were building these things. And I sometimes use a car analogy that, the developers spend their time sort of with the hood open on the car all day long, and they're tinkering with the engine and, changing the oil and replacing the carburetor and all this. And program managers get to do bits of that as well. We have the hood open and we get our hands dirty, but we're also involved in, decisions about why we're building 4-door cars instead of 2-door cars, and, why the color on the leather stitching or the color on the leather seats and that stitching matters, to a customer's decision to buy. And so that kind of, brought me eventually into a team at the time, which was called TFS, the old Team Foundation Server team, and, began my sort of journey into ALM, Agile, and DevOps.
And you joined Microsoft before TFS was even there, because what was that, .NET 1.1.20 timeframe, and Visual Studio Team Services was a big, 2005 era product?
Yeah, gosh, Team Services, I think Visual Studio Team Services was a little bit later. I don't think we stumbled into Team Services until...
Sorry, Team System.
Oh, yeah, so Team System, you're right. Yeah, it was back in like the 2005 era. That's right, yeah. So, yeah, and I think back, when I joined Microsoft, it was, ASP.NET was like beta, it was like, that was actually the first contract was supporting ASP.NET, and it was back in the time of scripting and, ASP sort of traditional, and lots changed since then.
Good times. So there's so much in the product, but what are you thinking about day in and day out now?
Yeah, boy, the things that I'm really spending a lot of time on with the product are thinking about how we can make it two things distinctly. I think what we call simple and more social. So, we want Azure DevOps to be a product that organizations need, but that developers want. And the reason I say it that way is because we know we need to build a product that, and a set of services here really, that developers fall in love with. And what we're hearing from developers, it's that there's two things that are going to help them fall in love with the product more, if you will. And that's making the product more simple and more social. So spending a lot of time on how we can reduce concepts and help people kind of achieve more with less, if you will. So that's the aspect of simple. And then social is really becoming real, because as you know, writing software, building services, it's a team sport. It's not something you do on your own. And so our services themselves need to, better integrate with social platforms, and also, provide a more connected experience, so that the work you're doing, whether it's, completing a work item or, reviewing a pull request, is not something that you're doing on an island by yourself, but it's something that you're doing with your peers and colleagues, and, potentially with people around the world, depending on how your organization is set up.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the public projects, there's probably a lot of surface area there for adding the social bit, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, public projects are, they've been around for years, obviously, in one way, shape, or form, but they're newer to Azure DevOps. But it's really just this sort of realization that you're going to be developing software with the world and with people around the world. And it's no longer a world where we do that just in our own environments, right? We're going to do that with all sorts of different people, and we're going to share that. So yeah, we've got a lot of surface area there in the product to improve and to add on to make those experiences a lot more social.
And with that, we'll have a word from our sponsor.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a software engineering firm and Microsoft Gold partner, empowering development teams to be their best. ClearMeasure equips developers with the DevOps tools, methods, and automation necessary to focus on building their applications, rather than wrestling with builds, deployments, or environments. Click clear-measure.com to see whether a DevOps implementation is for you.
And we're back talking to Aaron Bjork from the Azure DevOps team. And Aaron, you're talking about making things more social, but you've also been focusing on DevOps culture as well. But that's just a broad topic. What specifically do you think about in that realm?
Yeah, well, I think what I spend my time thinking about is that I think adopting DevOps or implementing DevOps or achieving DevOps in an organization, it's not just a choice of tools. And I think a lot of people, get their head wrapped in sort of the wrong direction by thinking that, if we do this particular thing or we adopt this particular tool, even Azure DevOps, for example, that we will, change and it will lead to this change in behavior of folks on the team and of the organization. And while there's aspects of that are true, I mean, I think, tool sets obviously can help change what you're doing. And there are absolutely practices that make sense along the way. But I think what I see is really needed is organizations need to adopt a new culture that kind of becomes a foundation for all that change. And I think that's a journey that we've been on here at Microsoft of our own journey of change and going from sort of the old way of writing code to sort of a model now where we're deploying on a very, very frequent basis, where we have thousands of people contributing to repos all at the same time. And while there's a set of practices that helped us do that, it was really grounded in a culture of trusting each other and a culture of wanting to change. So we sometimes call that around here, we call that a culture of aligned autonomy. And the reason we use those words is because it's trying to get everybody pointed in the same direction and moving in a common direction so that we're achieving the same goal, but also, really realizing that we can't script every aspect of that, and we can't tell every single person how to do their job. And so there needs to be a really healthy balance of autonomy on the other side. And I think those have been kind of foundational words for us as we build a culture here of improvement and of DevOps, sort of embracing DevOps. And it's something I get a chance to speak with a lot of different groups about as well, because I think most organizations are trying to improve and trying to change the way they work. And I like to help them think about that outside of just a couple of set of practices or tools, but helping them to think about that in light of the entire organization and everything that goes into it.
That's a big topic, and I can see how that the change is going to be slow and really gradual in really big companies. Certainly, I've read about the Microsoft story, and some of our previous guests have talked about the journey, the transformation. Then I think about all these thousands of mid-sized teams or at companies that are not technology companies, but maybe there's a small development group that reports to the COO or the CFO, and they're trying to adopt DevOps principles and methods as well. So what would you say to those guys?
Yeah, I would just say keep doing it and let the evidence of the success that you're having be the motivation, if you will, for the rest of the company or organization. So oftentimes when I find a group where you've got a pocket or a smaller group within inside a larger organization, and they're wanting to work differently, and maybe they are working differently, and they're implementing some DevOps practices and changing the way that they do things, and they aspire to see the entire organization, if you will, follow along. And what I usually encourage them to do is don't try to sort of preach your way to the finish line, if you will. So if you go in and try to tell everybody, oh, we should be doing things differently, and you've got to adopt Agile and you've got to adopt DevOps, it tends to kind of come off the wrong way. I don't think it's a great way to influence others in an organization. Instead, what I encourage people to do is find ways to tell stories about how the group that you're working in is improved, and using maybe some metrics to show that improvement, stories to kind of compare and contrast what it used to look like and how it looks now. And I find that if you can focus on that, usually you start to see sort of a groundswell of support that can lead to a bigger change. But that's always my advice to people within organizations is, get out of the preach about it mindset. Don't evangelize it. Don't wear a robe and sandals thinking that you're going to convert everybody, because you're not. Instead, focus on doing it really well and look for those stories, if you will, that really demonstrate the value and demonstrate the benefits that you're realizing from working in a different way.
You mentioned metrics, and probably the listeners are thinking, okay, which metrics? So which ones do you look at?
Yeah, there's a couple that really always stand out to me. One of the really important ones for us is the amount of time that a branch, if you will, like a developer branch, stays disconnected from main or from master. And when I look back to the way that we used to work and the way that we work today, more or less our engineers are working in micro branches or user branches that are only disconnected from master for a very short period of time, days at the most. And we used to work in a way where we had branches of the code base that were disconnected from, at the time, what we called main for weeks, if not months. And to me, that's a really, really leading indicator to, the amount of debt that you're going to have, and really the quality that you're going to be able to achieve in your main or master branch. And so that's a metric that we look at, and I always encourage other organizations to look at if they're looking at sort of things to evaluate how they're doing. Another one is both lead and cycle time for not just new work that you've identified, but for bugs. We've been through a journey of really learning how to take debt seriously and take bug debt seriously. And we lived a point in time in our journey where we just had, mountains of bugs piling up on teams. And we got in this very unhealthy mindset or practice where we would, every few months kind of triage the mountain of debt and then make decisions about what to do with it. But most of the time we weren't making hard decisions. We were sort of making easy decisions by recategorizing it off to the next release or reprioritizing it as a lower priority bug and then hanging on to it. And then, what it led to is a few months later, we're sort of doing it all again. And boy, talk about waste and talk about, sort of demoralizing practices. So we've gotten into a mindset now of treating bug debt very, very seriously. And, teams have a number that they kind of maintain, if you will, which we call our bug cap, which helps them stay to a healthy level of debt. But you can easily measure that by just measuring lead time, which is the amount of time a bug, goes from being created to actually being fixed or deployed into production. And then cycle time is the amount of time that you're spending on actually fixing it. So how much time does it actually spend in progress? And we've seen those numbers reduce dramatically across our teams over the years as we've implemented Agile and DevOps practices. So those are a couple that I think are kind of waypoints, if you will, or good guideposts to starting a journey towards working differently.
Now, do you collect those manually, or does Azure DevOps Services collect those automatically and present them?
Yeah, that's the beauty. The majority of things are collected automatically, if you will, right through our service, right through Azure DevOps. So we have an analytics service which sort of runs in the background of all the services, and it's pulling that data into more or less a warehouse where you can then go get it and compare how you've improved and look at how you've changed and look at how those types of things are trending. I think one of the important things that I always tell people, though, is that there's not, people always want to hear a metric and they're like, what's a good number? And I think, well, typically a good number is lower than the previous number, and to me, like, you talked about earlier that this is a journey for teams and it's not something that you change overnight. And so I don't think there is a metric that you should be watching or a number that represents health. But I think typically if you're understanding those numbers as they are today, and then you're working towards making them smaller, if you will, or watching them move in a healthy direction, that's positive. And that's the goal I think that teams should have. So it's not about achieving a specific specific value for a specific metric, but it's learning what health looks like in your organization, and then kind of moving the team in that direction towards health.
So you mentioned the analytics service, and there's the new analytics views within Azure boards, or actually it's in the overview section. Is that what you're talking about, where listeners should go to surface those metrics?
Yeah, that's right. So you could, if you're looking for that for the first time, you could search for analytics views and Azure DevOps, and you'll find some documentation on it. But off in the left rail under the overview section, there's a space called analytics views. And right now, Azure Boards is the highlight there, if you will, but we're working on adding the additional services in there as well. But what that allows you to do is, create a data set, if you will, from metrics and data that you've got in the system. And, you pick and choose how you want that data set to look. So you can pick a range of time. You can pick, obviously, different fields and then aggregations that you want. And then if you then jump over into Power BI, you can immediately connect up Power BI to those views. So once you pull it all in, you can use it in Power BI to kind of slice it and dice it in a bunch of different ways. And yeah, if you're new to that feature, that's a great way to kind of go approach it and try it out. And my guess is that you'll be enlightened at how much data is there, and enlightened at some of these things that you might have on your own teams that are ripe for improvement or ripe for sort of starting to get that metric moved in a healthy direction.
Okay, so pairing this. And you do have to go into Power BI to get those metrics that you were talking about. It sounds like
Well, there's a couple ways to do it. So Power BI is where you can really explore them. Also, in our widget gallery on our dashboards, we have a set of kind of pre-canned and pre-built widgets that help bring this stuff to life as well. So a good example of that is lead and cycle time widgets. So you can go plop those right on a dashboard and immediately start to evaluate and understand those metrics for different work item types, whether it's a user story, task, or bug. You can do that today. And those are kind of pre-canned and pre-built, if you will, right, for the team to use. But Power BI is where you can really go and start to kind of twist the data and look at it in different ways and pull in other data sets and really start to have that bigger picture understanding.
Okay. You had mentioned the lead time and cycle time of a bug, but the whole Azure DevOps team, all multiple hundred, you've eliminated the dedicated tester role, the SDET role, and everybody's an engineer. So specifically, who creates the bugs?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the bugs get created by a lot of people. So they're created by engineers themselves. They're created in some way by customers, because we have our work management system directly hooked up to our customer feedback channels. So we see it directly there from customers. And then they're created by PMs as well. But the team themselves are the ones creating the bugs, because they're the ones testing those capabilities, even though we don't have a dedicated role called tester. So
okay, awesome. Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion around the industry among Fortune 500 enterprise companies, as well as smaller companies about the right types of roles. And then Scrum has had that discussion for a long time, and I think people are trying to figure out how Scrum meshes with DevOps and what does it do to team organization and how that changes. So I don't think that conversation is finished.
Yeah, no, I don't think it is either. But in my, from my perspective, Scrum and DevOps are, they work in concert with one another. I don't think they have to compete or work against each other. I think for us, you kind of alluded to the fact that we've eliminated the tester role, and we have engineers, writing and testing code. And to me, that's just been an evolution that fits very, very naturally with Scrum. So I tell people today that we have, a team of engineers, and all of the engineers on our teams, they write code, they test code, and they deploy code. And they're expected to do all the three of those things. And if you think about, Scrum and working in a sprint and delivering a shippable increment at the end, having a team of engineers that are writing code, testing code, and then deploying code fits very, very naturally into the Scrum model there, so that you can not only, declare that you have a shippable increment at the end of a sprint, but you can actually ship it and deliver it. And, that's the way we approach it on our teams. And I think it's worked very, very well.
Awesome. Well, anything else that you're spending your time on these days that the listeners should know about?
I've got some fencing projects at home, and planning a new chicken coop. So that's probably the other thing, but that probably doesn't relate super well to this particular DevOps topic. So
no, hey, but that's fun. New chicken coop. Do you have an existing chicken coop?
Yeah, we have an existing one. Yeah, so my wife's always looking to expand our surface area. So talking about how we can raise a new barn, if you will, and make room for more birds. So
awesome. So I guess it's been a long time since you've purchased eggs at the supermarket.
Yeah, that's a thing of the past for the most part.
Yeah, that is fun. And the eggs, for some reason, our eggs taste different than the ones you buy at the store. They taste better.
Oh yeah, they do. It's kind of hard to explain if you've never experienced it, but I think literally farm fresh eggs, that are straight out of the coop. When you use them, they're a day or two old, and they look different, and they actually taste different. And I think, if you just go with sort of freshness, and thinking about that, the most eggs you buy in the store are, they're not fresh, if you will. And so I think you're tasting that difference when you have, eggs that come off your own property or from a local producer who's doing it right in your backyard, and then you're consuming them just a couple days later.
Yeah, I also love the new source of disposal for small bits of leftover foods that don't make it to the fridge.
Yeah, we always have a pile of stuff on the counter that's somebody's got to take it out to the chickens. That's always kind of an evening activity, if you will, is take this out to the chickens. And whether it's stuff that comes out of the garden that we're not eating, or leftovers or whatnot, they take care of it all for you. So it makes it easy.
Now, what kind of predators do you struggle with? And have you lost any chickens to them?
Oh yeah, we lose chickens, and we have. Never fun to lose a bird, but we do. Main predators are coyotes. I think those are the big ones. And then, believe it or not, hawks and eagles are both really, really common. So, if the chickens are out in the yard on a nice day, it's not uncommon to see a bald eagle, up above, sort of looking to come dive in. And we've had the hawks and eagles come in and try to take birds right out of the backyard or right out of the field. So that's pretty common. But coyotes are the main ones. I mean, we have raccoons and the occasional bobcat. There are bears in the area as well. We've never had a problem with a bear, but coyotes are the main ones that we struggle with.
Yeah, okay. I can see that. Our donkeys keep the coyotes away, but we have lost them to raccoons. And our run is completely enclosed, but you can see the raccoons attempting to get in. And I've had to trap raccoons just because they're just relentless at strategizing how to hit those birds.
Yeah, they are smart little critters for sure. And they're not prone to give up. So yeah, you got to have a well-enclosed area. And then, we've learned it's kind of seasonal too. So, we let the chickens out and they have a lot of time during the day, but typically only if we're around, because those animals know if they're out sort of unattended to and you don't have other animals around, they're going to take a shot at them.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Well, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Aaron, for visiting with me.
Yeah, thanks, Jeffrey. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
And until next week, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.